Welcome to the Gentleman's Talk, where the podcast talks about a man's battle with mental health, his personal experiences, and his journey to be a better soul. Hosted by James Dean Littlejohn.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Gentleman's Talk. How are we? I hope you're okay. We're here on Reflection Sunday, my favourite day. I've done a lot of exercise today to make up for a rather heavy weekend of socialising. And yeah, I've done a lot of fitness, been very thirsty, and just tried to get back into a routine of healthiness. I must explain my dulcet, husky tones are exacerbated, shall we say, today on today's podcast due to the fact I have Manius influenza. It's a difficult strain. It normally takes out people, but the strong will survive. And here I am with man flu, shall we say? And it's not good. It's not good, but it's fine. I'm living with it. I'm getting by. So yeah, I've had a good weekend actually. So relatively stressful week last week, and sort of, because I had something to look forward to with regards to a last-minute decision to get together with a couple of friends of mine. We managed to go out for a cheeky social, and it was good. We managed to just have a good time. It was really nice to get out and about and talk to different people, have a good dance, and felt sort of really good about it. So, I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the weekend. I did, however, have the hangover from hell on Saturday, mainly because I chose, it was worth the hangover. It was worth the hangover just because the reason why the hangover happened. So we obviously, got home at a reasonable time, 2 p.m, and I decided that we would just go out to the bar, have one for the road, jumped into the old Clock and Balls, my home bar, and had a good chat with my best friend, and we had one for the road, which turned into two for the road until 4 o'clock in the morning. But it was good because I actually realised I was in a darker place than I really thought, and it was because of talking to him, because of opening up to him, that I managed to understand some of the things and some of the reasons why I've been feeling a little bit low lately. Besides battling my normal battles, I've just been feeling a little bit numb lately, just a little bit numb, finding it really hard to get excited about anything. And it's just one of those things. But I had a good chat, and this is where I keep saying, be open, be honest. And I was open and honest with my friend to the point where even at 4 o'clock in the morning, I got the drunken tears. Now, I'm not ashamed of it by any stretch of the imagination. It was just because I was opening up about myself and talking openly, which, like I said, gave me the ability to understand a little bit about myself. But also, I got to let someone else in, or let someone into how I was feeling. And I know it affected my friend, actually, because he said, he even in his drunken stupor, even it hit him hard. Because I suppose, like he said to me on the evening, it's really hard to understand the true depths of mental health, and the roller coaster of a ride it is when you don't inherently suffer from any ailments. That my friend is very, very, very laid back, in a good thing. I think the reason we get on so well is purely because he is very laid back. And I'm obviously the complete opposite. And in most relationships, shall we say, and I'm not talking from a relationship perspective with regards to my friend, but in relationships, opposite attracts. And it's normally the same in terms of groups of friends as well. Because if you have too many people trying to be the alpha, then you get very, very difficult friendship group because everyone's trying to fight for the status. And it's... Sorry, see, hear my sniffles. So, that's why I think we've been best mates for 29 years. And even when I was talking on Friday, Christ, I'm flying back in time. Even when I was talking back to him in that morning, it still felt awkward from a little bit of a perspective from me, because it's inherently talking about my problems. And even with somebody who I've known for 29 years, even talking to him, I still felt a little bit embarrassed. It was difficult. I got it off my chest, if you like. And I felt better for it because I got to get my emotions out. It's probably something that I needed for a while. We don't see each other that often. Friendship groups, we're close. We talk every day on our little WhatsApp group. But actually seeing someone face to face and actually getting to the point where you can actually open up is a really amazing thing. To feel that you can do that, and it's very hard. Even after 29 years, that was a new level of trust for me, because you've got to really feel that trust to be able to open up. And not that I've never distrusted him in any way, shape or form. It's just me as a person allowing myself to feel a little bit vulnerable, if you like, because that's a difficult step to take, especially, and I refer to myself not in an arrogant state, but as an alpha male. I always have. I've always wanted to be the best at everything I can. I always want to be, the sort of kind of the one at the top. I always like to be the leader. That's just where I thrive. It's that comfort zone for me. I thrive under a little bit of pressure. So, to be able to open up, I don't care what anyone says, and this is why I'm doing it. This is why I'm talking about this. It is hard if you're an alpha to feel a little bit emasculated, but we mustn't do that. We must get past that point, and because it's almost a euphoric feeling because you get to open up to somebody, and I think by the fact that I'm just inherently an open and honest person, I like to think that brings people's honesty back out in them as well. So, it's difficult to do, but once you do it, it's an amazing feeling because it just relieves the weight off your shoulders. Saturday, like I said, I had a bit of a hangover, and I acknowledged straight away that I was going to feel a little bit low, a little bit depressed, so to speak, because, alcohol's a natural depressant. So, and especially when you drink large quantities of it. I normally have the 1-2 glasses here and there, but when you go out for a bit of a binge drink in a UK fashion, it was ridiculously mental. I said I wouldn't do shots, and Black Sambuca shots came out, and then you go with the flow because you get into the atmosphere, you get into the zone, and it does get a bit crazy, especially I think if you don't go out very often. And hence the reason why we were talking till 4 a.m. And I would have carried on. It was only my friend who went, I need to go to bed, mate, because I'm up early in the morning. So, So, obviously giving his, standard time. But he had to be up early to be picked up. So, it was one of those things where I was like, fine. So we put it to bed. But yeah, I had the natural depressed feeling, which I acknowledged I was going to feel that way. I didn't allow my brain to overthink that. And every time I had negative thoughts, I put them to bed and went, you're just depressed because you're dehydrated, you haven't eaten properly, you're hungover, just move on. And then today, because I'd slept most of the afternoon, which was a blessing, I didn't normally get that offer, but my kids are growing up, so they don't hang around me as much, which is a blessing in disguise. In a nice way. And and my wife was out as well. So for me, I had the whole afternoon in bed. I was crippled. I'm not going to lie to you. Like I said, it's not the worst hangover I've ever had, but it's certainly up there, and it's certainly the worst hangover I've had in a long time. I didn't eat at the end of the night, which normally absorbs some of it. I didn't do any of that. I didn't drink a glass of water. I literally just went to bed. Anyway, moved on from that. And then Sunday, I felt full of spirit and vigour today. I really did. I had a good sleep. I've got man flu, so that's brought me down as the days pressed on. However, we live and get by. But what that did do, and this is where I like to be educational as well as just talk about my life. It's important to talk about my life because I enjoy it. I enjoy getting out there. I like people to know that it doesn't matter who you are. Like I said, I'm just a 41-year-old man that struggles. And even on Friday at night at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm still shedding a tear because, I'm still, the depths of it came out that I'm not happy at the moment. I don't know how to be. It's really difficult for me, battling ambition and desire, design, just craziness. The stuff that goes on in my head is absolutely bonkers, to the point where I've started writing notes down on my phone, because sometimes at like 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll feel like I need to reply to an email, or, the other night I wrote a letter to my mum and dad. It was like 2 in the morning and my mind was absolutely bonkers. And I wrote a letter to them on my notes. Now, I don't know whether it was a letter that I will give them. It was a lot of depth. It's on my phone. I don't know if it's a letter I'll give them. But it was one of those ones there. And I cast my mind back, actually. And this is the reason why I did it, was because when I did CBT therapy, which is cognitive behavior therapy, the one thing that the therapist told me to do, and this sort of brings me onto this podcast, because I really, not just about me, but I want to talk education. I want to try and help people. And what she told me to do was to write a letter to the people that have hurt me, and or on certain occasions, things that were upsetting me. And then she said, you can do one of two things. You can either burn the letter, but you've got it off your brain, and that makes you feel better, or you can risk the repercussions or whatever it may come if you give it to that person. It depends on how that person receives that information. And I've cast my mind back as well to 180 reporting, which is really important to understand yourself. But it is a really, really difficult thing to do, because to receive someone's opinion of you on something you've either done or your personality can be quite damning. Some people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear the truth. I do. I really do. And I believe in 180 reporting, because I believe it makes us better people. So they were the two options she left. She said, either you can give it to them and have a discussion and go over it like adults, or you can, burn it and say it's off your chest. And lately I've been very, very, a bit over the place. I don't take knockbacks and rejection very easily. So, not getting the job I wanted, what I thought I could do, it did knock me back. And that's where it started, actually, was I was actually writing an email to my boss, trying to explain why I didn't articulate over the interview very well. And I have my own reasons, but I felt that I needed to put that down. I never sent that email, absolutely not. It wasn't a negative email, it was a very professional email, because I knew what the end recipient was going to be. But it's still it's just sat in my inbox, and it's way too late to worry about it now. So from my perspective, it got it off my chest, and I've actually reviewed it, and because I wrote it in such detail on the skill set that I felt that she gave me feedback on, I actually purposely at the time dived deeper into my mind to offer a professional response to those questions with thought process involved in it, that I kept it for future. So it's like, although I haven't sent it, there's no reciprocant on it. It's sat in drafts. It will sit there until I go for my next interview, and they hopefully ask me a similar question that I can now articulate professionally and at the grade that was expected. So learning curve, but I did take a little bit of a knockback, but that's what I learned by putting that down, those words out of my brain. I felt like I'd processed it. And then it was also, I was sat there and I think I had a sad night a couple of weeks ago. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I wasn't sleeping very well. My mind was going a bit crazy. And, I don't know, I just felt like I needed to sort of tell the last 10, 15 years of my life to my parents in a letter with everything. And I wrote this absolutely long, horrendous, doesn't even work as a sentence, but I wrote this, it didn't need absolute, that's why. I wrote this long letter. Sometimes you try and stick words in, don't you, that make it sound posher, but in actual fact you don't need to, you just sound like a dick. So I'm learning to do that now, because sometimes banging extra long words is unnecessary. And do you know where I got that from? A brain training game. Actually, it was really, really good. I do it to try and calm myself down by learning and challenging my brain. But I digress on that one. So yeah, so it kind of sort of grown from there, wrote the letter, haven't sent the letter. It's quite long, quite lengthy, talks about my emotions, talks about how amazing my parents are, and it's probably something that I may give. I don't know. It may need tweaking. I got to a point where I'd done enough and I was exhausted. So it did its job. It got the mental state off of me and it made me sleep. So I got a good 4.5 hours sleep. So I'm learning this process, and this is where it's important to write your thoughts down. I talk about a journal in previous podcasts. It's so important to get these thoughts off of your mind. I write notes all the time. Crazy that I've got notebooks all over that I write things down and things that come into my head. I might be on a reflection walk and I've recorded voice recordings. I recorded the other day on how I would implement, this is how crazy my brain was, how I would implement a process in my current organisation that would work better in terms of getting better results. I did this about 5-10 minute voice note because it was on my brain and I was like, oh, that sounds really good. If I listen to it now it'd probably sound absolutely bonkers. But I'm learning to get these thoughts that I think are good on voice notes, and I write notes into my little notepad on my phone. I write it on my notepad beside me. I write these little things down because I think they're good to get off your mind so that you can look at them and process them later. What I have done and have noticed is sometimes when I go back, I don't understand them. So I just put it to bed and go, that was fucking crazy, James. But as I learn, as I adapt, and this is where we are, we're 10 months into this journey. I've been talking to you for 10 months and I've enjoyed it because I'm learning and because I'm constantly talking about it, because I'm constantly in touch with the well-being side. I enjoy talking. I think it's really important. So much so that I've got this new merchandise, but it's not merchandise for me. I bought it, and it's a new company called Boys Get Sad Too. I'm not selling it. I'm just saying the message. I'm talking about the message. I bought it off of them, and the message is amazing. And it talks about letting people know that boys, male, whatever, we get sad too. We really, really do. And I think it's really important to understand the pressures that are put on men. We have to succeed. We have to be a father, a husband, a boyfriend. We have to achieve good things. We have to be perceived as being successful, or we're a down and outer. We have to provide constantly. We have to protect. We do all these things as well as our own natural. We've all got our natural hang-ups. I've got hang-ups on my weight, and I deal with that daily, and I've got hang-ups about all sorts of little crazy things. And those things are the things we battle naturally. So when you start chucking in, children into the mix, jobs that you don't want to do this job anymore, but it provides, and you go in and jaw work day in, day out, etc., etc. And I'm not saying this isn't across the board. I do know that these pressures are felt by other genders, but this is more about what is still expected of men, and they're the challenges that we talk about. So raising awareness, Boys Get Sad Too, absolutely great. So go check them out. Like I said, I'm not endorsed by them, but I just think it's a really good message to try and get out there that, don't be ashamed to say that, we get sad. Don't be ashamed of it, because as I cast my mind back to the start of this podcast, I said I felt embarrassed, almost emasculated a little bit, talking to someone I've known for 29 years that knows inside and out. He absolutely gets me. So, he's a really outstanding friend. And if you can't talk to someone like that, then who can you talk to? And it's also, like I said, I've got my friend Billy, and he comes across as absolutely fantastic. And I get a lot out of talking to him, and I feel open and honest with him as well. And the same as Nelly. It's really, really important. And I move that into my brother and my father and my little I call it my circle of trust. It's small, but it's my little circle, and I like to bounce everything off of these individual people, and I like them to feel that they can be open and honest with me. And it sort of brought me on really a little bit to, by the way, I'm drinking water today, so unusual for me. I know I'm normally got a gin or a tea in the hand, but today I'm on a little bit of water just to hydrate myself. So keep the palate moist, as they say. Anyway, so it brought me on. I've been learning education. I've been learning about the different types of depression and how we should recognise them. And I've done this because it's something I've seen, and it's an absolutely incredible sort of way to understand depression, and the types there are, signs and symptoms. Maybe you might need to have them, and then there'll be a little caveat at the end. But I like to educate myself, and I like to pass on that education. I think it's really important. If we notice the signs and symptoms before they progress and they take hold, that's when we need to do it. We need to get it at the start point. We need to grip it, get talking about it, so it doesn't get into the depths where it's uncontrolled. We change our lifestyle, we change our mentality, we become negative, and ultimately we go towards that suicidal word, which we fucking need to get rid of. We need to reduce those numbers. So we need to understand that obviously everybody goes through sadness at some point in their life. There will be grief, there will be sadness. But as with most things, they do subside. You might have been drinking alcohol like I was on Friday, and I felt naturally depressed because I said alcohol's a depressant, and we need to recognise that. So it may last a few days or even a week. And that can happen if you're not feeling comfortable with yourself internally, you're not feeling about your surroundings, you don't enjoy your job. You get these waves of sadness, and depends on the circumstances really, just depends on how intense that sadness can be. But if it's more than 2 weeks and your ability to function, this may be the sign of depression. This is one of the first signs. We need to understand that. If your mood has changed so much, it's lasted longer than 2 weeks, and it's actually hindering your ability to function, get out of bed, focus, sleep. These are the things that we need to look out for. And some of those common symptoms: deep feelings of sadness, dark moods, feelings of worthlessness or hopelessness, sleep changes, lack of energy is a massive one, the inability to concentrate, difficulty getting through your normal functioning activities, just putting on a pair of socks, brushing your teeth, brushing your hair, lack of interest in enjoying things, withdrawing from friends. How many people do we do that to? We withdraw from our friends and we go back into it thinking it's the way forward. And ultimately, when you see those sort of signs, they result into the potential of thinking a lot about death or self-harm. And these are the signs of depression. When you start feeling these constantly, you're losing your function. This is where we need to look out for that sign that you are heading to a mental state problem. You are heading towards that depression. But obviously noting that depression affects everybody differently. And you might only have some of these symptoms. You may have other symptoms that I haven't even listed. But normally they're the common ones. So we must keep that in mind, that these symptoms, from time to time, we do have them without depression. You may not enjoy your job. You may be in a poor relationship. Maybe your children aren't talking to you. Could be anything. Maybe you've fallen out with a long-term friend. Maybe you're not comfortable with your weight, your style. You don't know, your living costs. We can all feel these symptoms. They don't often mean depression, but you may also need a change in your environment. And then we sort of move on really, that one of the first ones, and comes in different forms really, but major depression, that's the one of the first ones that I know this because, I've had major depression, and it's a common reoccurring condition. It can come and go, as much as sort of breaking into the realms of feeling like that bipolar disorder where you up and down all the time. Some people call it major depression order or chronic depression, severe depression, or unipolar depression. And people with major depression, they experience symptoms most of the day, every day. And I was classed as a manic depression. So I go through waves. I go through constant waves. It's not bipolar. I've been tested for bipolar, but I do get depression episodes quite badly because of the way my brain works, because of the PTSD and because of the ADHD. I go into depression states where I constantly challenge. I need constant challenge. I need constant praise. I need constant reassurance. I need to feel that I'm part of something. And when you don't feel part of that, it's crazy how your brain can instantly move to negative thoughts. I do it at work. If I don't talk to my friends or my colleagues, and I like to be an open and honest person, but if I don't talk to them, or I feel like I'm not getting a friendly connection from them, it does affect me, even though it may be nothing. It's me overthinking things. I do get that, and I do feel a little bit like ostracised, but there is no reason to feel ostracised. It's just that constant need for reassurance. I'd love to be able to get rid of it. I really would, but it's part of me. Excuse me a second. I had a little tickle in the throat. And like many mental health conditions, it has little to do with what's happening around you. You can have a loving family, you can have friends, you can have your dream job. You can have the kind of life that others envy, and you can still have depression. How many people do we see, these top 1%ers, that don't look happy? Where is their challenge? And then we're at the bottom of the scale, I certainly am anyway, where I'm fighting to be at the top. So I'm depressed about being at the top, and there's people at the top with everything, and they don't want it. They feel depressed. Even if there's no obvious reason for your depression, that doesn't mean it's not real, or that you can just simply get on with it, move past it. Major depression is a severe form, and it can cause such things as sadness, gloom, grief, difficulty sleeping, this is a bit of a contradiction, because there's actually two elements to this. You can have difficulty sleeping, which I always do, or you can be sleeping too much, and there is. But a lot of people associate manic depression with sleeping too much. You just want to constantly sleep. Excuse me. Unfortunately, on the other end of the spectrum, where I sort of function on, I sort of function on very little sleep. So for me, it's a bit the odd way. My mind goes in overdrive, and I'm watching videos, and I'm constantly, I can be sat there at night, and then I could be like, I need to go to sleep. Oh no, I'm going to sit there and watch a little video clip that's going to turn into an hour. It's going to turn into me jumping onto YouTube, learning how to build a Viking wall. It could be anything like that. And that's the spectrum I get. But you might also, which is more commonly known, you sleep too much because your mind's been over racing. Because I think the ADHD for me, I like overthinking. Not overthinking. I like constantly thinking. When my brain is nuts, honestly, I'd love you to be in there. It'd be a party for everybody. But I do constantly overthink things. So I am constantly challenging, which is why I've been playing these brain training games, because it exhausts me and takes my mind away from focusing on little trivial things that can upset me. You get lack of energy and fatigue. That's a massive one. I hate that. Your changes in your appetite. And again, this could be double-edged sword. There's people that go into depression and lose weight. They don't eat because they're constantly burning energy. They're constantly overthinking. And then you get the other end of the spectrum, where you can be sleeping loads, you're sluggish, and you're overeating fatty foods. And then you go into another sadness then because you're overweight. And it's that vicious circle of life. We all know that vicious circle. And when we all know how to get off it. We all know we need to eat healthier. We need to go out and exercise. We all know that. But you get stuck in that transit. You get stuck in that loop. And it's a horrible place to be. Loss of interest in formerly pleasurable activities, I wrote down here. Exactly. How many times have you done something that you absolutely love and then you can't stomach to do it? You get out of bed, you make every excuse, or, oh, there's a little bit of rain, I'm not going to play golf today. Or whatever you're going to do, whatever your exercise is. I did it with wakeboarding. I got really good at it, thoroughly enjoyed it, found every excuse under the sun not to go for 2 years, sold my kit, not sure I'll do it again. I love the water, and that is horrible to think that has gone that way. I just lost interest in it. I couldn't get it. I couldn't get the interest. And then, you get your lack of concentration. Feeling of worthlessness is one of the horrible ones, and hopelessness. Like, you can't get out of that mood. Constant worry about an anxiety. And then we break into the final one, which is that thoughts of death, self-harm, or suicide. That's the place, and we need to avoid getting to these stages. We need to talk about ourselves. We need to get open and honest before we get to this stage. You've heard part 1 of my podcast, part 2 coming this week. And That's the reality. That's the truth. That's no... As hard as it is for me to talk about that, this is the truth. It's educational. It's to show you. It's to let you acknowledge that these things are real. It's not just a written statistic somewhere. These are real. This is something we need to change. And if you've got those symptoms, they can last weeks. They can last months. Like me, I've had the symptoms for fucking years. Even on antidepressants, I still get the symptoms. Some people might have single episodes. They may get one major depression and it completely wipes them out, and then they go, I don't want to ever do that again. And, they fight every chance to stop it. Some people are like that. They may have one bad episode and they don't get past that point. That's the reality. But regardless of how long you've had your symptoms, major depression can cause these sorts of problems in your relationships and your daily activities. So we must acknowledge that we need to talk about ourselves. We need to be open and honest. Another version, or another sort of kind of one that I didn't really know about this one, to be fair, but it's persistent depression. And this is probably the category that I'm in now. This is the, like I said, I've had major depression. I've had waves of it. I had it through my therapy, and that's what inherently put me on medication to function, to stop those fucking horrible thoughts when you're constantly trying to challenge yourself. So, and persistent depression is when it lasts 2 or more years and it's hard to get away. Maybe it's a personality trait. Unfortunately, some people are susceptible to getting depression more than others, especially if you're constantly challenging. Like I spoke to you earlier on, my best mate, I don't think he could get depressed. He gets episodes of sadness. We talk about it all the time. He tells me he just feels like he's on a rat race. He wants to get out of the mundane 4 walls. He wants to do things. So, we get that. Hold on. The manius influenza is driving my throat out. So I apologise for that. But I'm talking away. And people sort of may also refer to this as, I can't say, like chronic depression. Persistent depression might not feel as intense as a major depression episode, and that's what I get. And by that, because major depression sort of kind of boom in your face, and when you're persistent, I get waves of depression, so they can last 1-2 days, and they can break into 3, 4, 5 weeks. Like this last one I've had has been about 5 or 6 weeks. I've been fighting it. You put on the mask, you put on the brave face, you try to go out, you try to talk, you try to function, but inherently I had this about 5 or 6 weeks. There's not much I can do about it. I just battle it. I just go through the process of getting out and about, but acknowledging when I need to sleep and when I need to sort of shut down, I do. And persistent depression sort of might not feel as intense as that, but it can still strain your relationships. And it can still make tasks difficult. And it does with me. There can be days where I can be click of a fingers and I'm in that mood. I'm just like, rah, and you can upset people. I've done it before. Believe it or not, I was playing a game last Sunday with my brother and my best mate, and we were playing on the Xbox. Other consoles are available. And, I got really ratty at him being in the menu when I was trying to go to the next world, if you like. It was a long story. It sounds really geeky. It is really geeky. But it upset me and I snapped. And that was kind of a really bad attitude. I had to apologise. Normally I wouldn't have apologised. Normally I'd have just gone, it fucking is what it is. But I don't feel like I should do that. I feel like I should apologise. That was rude of me. So it makes me then, by apologising, tries to reinforce the fact, don't do that again. You've already known that that's a horrible thing to do. So we get past, we learn, we evolve. And some of the symptoms of persistent depression can be that deep sadness or hopelessness again. And notice how some of these are similar. This is what we need to be constant of. This is what I'm talking about, a little synopsis at the start of what it means. Low self-esteem, feeling of inadequacy. Lack of interest, we spoke about that. Appetite changes to sleep pattern or low energy. Concentration and memory problems. Difficulty functioning at work, inability to feel joy, and social withdrawal. More, I think, important to acknowledge persistent depression and that social withdrawal, because when it's a long-term depression, I very much struggle with pulling away from people. I delete people, I fucking block them, I just go, bah, and then all of a sudden I go, oh, I really need friends. Do you know what I mean? And I try to pull them back in. I've stopped doing that because I've made my circle smaller, right to the point where it's manageable. And I talk about it's managing your social networks, not trying to talk to 40, 50 people that don't care about you. Talk to 4 or 5 people that care about you. And that's where I've actually understood I've learned how to amend that social withdrawal on my persistent depression by not constantly going in waves of when I'm depressed, removing and blocking everybody, and when I'm not depressed, talking to people. I've done that by keeping my core group of people to 4 or 5, and I talk to them regular anyway, and I tell them that I'm not feeling great. I'm open and honest with them, so they know to take that extra step or that extra bit of care. And like I said, we've all looked after each other. We've all bought each other gifts. We're there for each other. So, and we're all doing this health thing together. So it does really work. And though it's a long-term type of depression, the severity of the symptoms can become less intense. And for months at a time before worsening again. And that's the problem. That's the thing with persistent is I very much go super intense, and I've had it where I'm like, fuck, I don't know what to do. I get waves and I'm like, and then I sort of subside and I feel, okay, this is just business as usual. Everyday jogging, normal good stuff, smack in the face again. And I've got a really dry throat, sorry. Some people also have episodes of major depression before or while they have that persistent depression order. And this is called double depression, believe it or not. I mean, this is just fucking nuts. This is stuff I'm learning that we need to, and this is how complex mental health really is. It's not just a case of you're feeling sad. This is the learning opportunity to understand and look for signs. It may not be in you. It may be in your friend, and you're noticing they're doing this. And you go, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's pull him back in. And persistent depression lasts for years at a time. And some people with this type of depression, they may sort of start to feel like their symptoms are just normal outlook on life. And I very much remember on many, many occasions before this journey 10 months ago, how I just remember talking to people and going, especially my wife, I just remember sitting there going, I just want to be who I was. I don't want to be this person anymore. I don't know how to stop being this person. And that's when you start to look at your depression as normal life. And that's very much where a lot of people get to. Especially if you're on drink and drug abuse, you kind of constantly feel that anyway. And it's going to, again, be exacerbated by drinking and taking drugs, which are those inherent depressants. So it looks like and feels like it's the normal life. You need to be able to break the norm. You need to be able to identify these signs and symptoms and help your friends break the norm. Help yourself break the norm. Identify these things. I do. I know when I'm like, fucking hell. And sometimes it creeps up on me. Like I said, Friday, 4 o'clock in the morning, smacked me in the face. I was sat there cuddling my friend at 3, 4 in the morning saying I just wanted to go to sleep. And he just looked at me and went, don't be fucking stupid. And I was like, I don't know where I'm going in life. I was going like this, and this is where that crept up on me. And I managed to talk about it. And then it sort of breaks us really into a category that we can all sort of, and I've had this, again, it's the start of it. This sort of breaks it into 2 disorders, really, that we all know and understand. And that is manic depression, which is also bipolar. And I remember going through the whole process to see if I had bipolar. And it was confirmed, like I said, by 3 different psychiatrists that I had PTSD at the time. They were like, no, you've just got chronic permanent PTSD, because all of my symptoms revolved around certain things that were to do with my crash, etc., etc. So they were like, no, you haven't got bipolar. You're just persistent depression, if you like. And sort of kind of manic depression involves periods of mania or hypomania, which is something I get, but I think that's my ADHD, or I now know, as I'm learning, is my ADHD. I go through the crazy bits where everyone's like, fucking hell, calm down, mate, you're a bit loud. Where you feel very happy, intense happiness, loudness, periods of alternative episodes of depression as well. manic depression is a sort of outdated name and what we now know as bipolar disorder. And hypomania is sort of less severe form of the mania, if you like. Hold on a second. And signs we need to look out for when we're talking about bipolar disorder, which is a severe, like I said, so severe with bipolar disorder. If you're diagnosed with bipolar, you need to, you've got to declare it on your medical certs. Some countries you can't go to. You have to have it on your driving license. It's crazy. So it's a really serious disorder, which is why I was so keen to get tested, because they were like, it could be life-changing. You can't do as many freedom things as you thought you could do. And that sort of signs we need to look out for on that really is kind of high energy, reduced sleep, irritability, racing thoughts and racing speech, increased self-esteem and confidence, unusual, risky and self-destructive behaviour, which is something I was doing, and feeling elated, high or euphoric. For medical professionals to diagnose you with sort of bipolar disorder, you have to have experienced an episode of mania, if you like, in the last 7 days, or less, if hospitalisation is a very difficult word to say that for me, is required. You may experience depressive episodes before or following a manic episode. And there's unfortunately with bipolar, you've got these highs, but you've also got these massive lows. And Stephen Fry is somebody, if you ever want to research someone, Stephen Fry, he has bipolar disorder, and you can literally see him. He's a comedian, absolutely hilarious guy, and he's got bipolar disorder, severe bipolar disorder, and he goes into some really crazy dark places. And he has got a biography out, so you should listen to it because it's very, very interesting. And he talks very, he's a bit philosophical. But when you get these depression episodes, they're kind of dark. They're really horrible. Feelings of sadness, emptiness, lack of energy, fatigue, suicidal thoughts. So it's all of the same symptoms, just manic. It's just you're in it deep, if you like. And in severe cases of episodes, you can include in hallucinations and delusions if you're in bipolar deep. And that's very much what Stephen Fry talks about. In which sort of kind of you can have mixed symptoms between the mania, if you like, the highs, and the depression lows. Sort of brings me on to another one, which I think sort of kind of, and like I said, you're going to learn quite a bit about those. And this is one I didn't even know about, and it's called perinatal depression. And this is one that's sort of to look out more so really not from a men's perspective, which is what we're talking about here, but this is kind of more for females. Maybe you've got a female friend and maybe you've got a wife. And the reason I think that this is really interesting to listen to in this aspect is to give you an understanding of kind of the additional thing that women can go through, so we can help support in that sort of sense as well. This isn't just about supporting each other, this is about supporting other people. And I thought that I learned a lot from this. And perinatal depression or major depressive disorder it's like a peripartum onset, and it occurs during pregnancy within the first 4 weeks or within 4 weeks of childbirth. And people may refer it as postnatal depression or postnatal depression more in the UK. You probably understand that more. And the term applies to the depression you get as a woman after giving birth. And it can occur while you're pregnant as well. So, look out for those signs and symptoms. And I'm going to tell you that in a minute. And it's due to sort of hormonal changes during pregnancy and childbirth, which can trigger the brain to sort of lead into these difficult mood swings. And then with the intense lack of sleep, physical discomfort, and Christ, the women that go through the body, the things that the body goes through is unbelievable. And having a newborn, and you've got this whole thing. And my wife actually had this postnatal depression. She actually had it, and I know a couple of friends that have had it. Quite severe. I know a very good friend of mine, and his wife had it so severe that she was out in the rain one night, and he woke up. She wasn't in the bed, and she was just walking, and she just didn't know what to do. He went and saved her life and pulled her back in, and they built their relationship from that foundation. So it was really important to understand that. And maybe if he'd have seen the signs and symptoms or understood the signs and symptoms, he could have been able to help. My wife had it. It was almost like she wasn't interested in the baby, our third baby, at all. She literally wasn't interested. And I had to do a lot of the sleeping, feeding aspect. She fed because she did the mothering instinct thing and she was breastfeeding. But everything else didn't come for about 6 weeks. So it's really important to understand that. And symptoms of sort of perinatal or postnatal depression can be as severe as major depression. And it can be things like sadness, anxiety, anger or rage. And I know that we can laugh and joke that most women are angry and rage anyway. The man aspect of this conversation can laugh about that. Excuse me. Exhaustion. Extreme worry about the baby's health and safety. They do that. Difficulty caring for yourself or the new baby, which is a really important sign and symptom to look out for, because this effect on both of them. And this is where we need to understand depression as a bigger picture. And then thoughts of self-harm or even harming the baby. So people who lack support and have maybe had depression before are at an increased risk of developing this postnatal depression. But it can happen to any person who's pregnant or who's just given birth. So it's absolutely amazing to understand these different signs and symptoms, but they all sort of kind of fall under very similar context. Depression seems to do that. You need to look out for the episodes. You need to look how long these last. Look at your friends. Look at yourself inwardly. And I'm going to sort of kind of finish on one that I think is quite prevalent because it's that time of year. In the UK, the seasons are drawing closer to autumn. We're getting those darker nights. We're getting those colder evenings and colder days. And sometimes they are nice. I was doing my reflection walk last night at 9 o'clock, and it was that beautiful time where the moon was bright. There was no clouds in the sky. So it was like that really beautiful white light was bouncing off the trees. There was a slight mist in the air and it was cold, and I had my hoodie on. And I was just walking around with a dog, and it was relaxing. It was beautiful. But that's not always the case as we draw into these darker nights, and we last about 3 or 4 months of this. And we sort of break into sort of seasonal affect disorder, SAD as they call it. And this is a sort of depression that is related to certain seasons, and it's a medical disorder. And medical sort of professionals, they refer to it as a major depressive order with seasonal patterns, and it can be debilitating. I know a very good friend of mine, and that's how we got into the conversations. He had a sad lamp, and I knew straight away what he did, because I do the same. I have a sad lamp for this time of year because I do get withdrawal from the sun. Symptoms often begin in the sort of early autumn days, and as the sort of nights draw longer and the time changes, and what happens is we tend to get similar symptoms to depression here. Social withdrawal, increased need for sleep. You constantly feel tired. You gain weight. You're almost like you're hibernating. You're almost like you're trying to bulk up for winter. We say it, we're bulking for winter. And daily feelings of sadness, hopelessness or unworthiness are really, really important to address. And seasonal depression, it may get worse as the season goes on, which is what we kind of need to keep an eye out for. And you know as an adult if you're getting into that area, but you may not know if you're younger and you're sort of starting to feel these tendencies to feel hopelessness. And it can lead to suicidal thoughts, so we need to grip that as much as we can. And we tend to find our symptoms in this kind of depression tend to subside as the sun comes out, and we tend to do the sun things, the water sports, the out with wilderness, etc. And it sort of kind of relates to your body rhythm changes, which sort of you tend to find you've got more energy in the sun, don't you? So a really, really important one to look out for. So as I break to a close on those, there is other depressions that we need to talk about. And if you think you have any type of depression, it is really fundamentally important to follow up with your doctor. Even if you talk to someone, follow up with your doctor. I'm not a medical professional in any way, shape or form. This is just my research. So this is what I'm learning, although factually correct. From what I've read from doctors' reports and things like that, you must caveat that whether you're talking to your friend, whether you're talking to anyone, your partner, always follow up with a doctor, because the doctor is going to be able to recommend you towards your therapy side of things. He may understand more. He may decide to refer you to CBT therapy, where you understand a bit more about yourself. He may look for a bipolar disorder examination, ADHD examination, may go and see a psychiatrist to get diagnosed with your own, if you've got PTSD from initial post-traumatic stress disorder. These avenues are there, although they are very constricted at the moment. Understandably, we need to talk to our doctor. So all depression types, really. We need to look after ourselves and get the right treatment for yourself. It's okay. The starting foundation is making sure that your well-being, making sure that you're getting out, making sure that you're drinking plenty of water, you're eating healthy, you're mindfulness, you're taking these reflection walks, looking and understanding yourself. Even 10 months in, I still battle my own daily problems. So we must look after ourselves, inherently do those things to start with. Talk to people. That just helps you engage. It boosts your confidence. And then we draw into the doctor's realms, and then we get the help professionally. And then what we tend to do is, like I've done, is I get help professionally and I talk alongside my friends. It's like double therapy for me. And it's really important we do that. We acknowledge these things. So just a little bit of an educational piece for you there, really. Just because I want people to understand depression. I really... It's not something to be played with. It's a very serious... It is debilitating. I don't care what anyone says. And I can be the nicest person on the front. I can have an absolutely blinding day, and I can go home and crash and burn. You put on smiles, but unless you physically acknowledge and you do these reflection aspects and you get out and challenge yourself, you won't know or understand what is going on with your mind until you start talking and learning and developing. So thank you very much for listening to me. I hope this has been a little educational piece for you. And I look forward to talking to you this week. I've got part 2 coming tomorrow, so I'm really looking forward to that. That's another educational piece for you. A bit of reality. It can be seen as difficult to listen, but it's the reality. And then I'm going to do a live podcast with the Billy Banterman as well. So we're going to jump on a live. I absolutely need to catch up with him properly. And I think what better way to have a good recording session with the Billster. So thank you for listening. Have a great evening. Have a great the rest of your weekend, or like I said, always whenever you listen to this, I hope you're staying positive. So take care and look after yourself. Bye everyone.